Hi, I'm Stephanie Jaworski of joybaking.com. Today we're going to make a multi-grain bread, and this is what it looks like. This is a very flavorful bread. We're using 3 types of flour and 3 types of seeds in it. So there's 2 steps that we need to do about 12 to 14 hours before we make our bread dough. So what I do is usually the night before. The first thing is we're going to make what is called a pre-ferment. You may know it as a starter. Essentially all we're doing is making just a little bit of bread dough. So in a small bowl, I have 2/3 of a cup, which is 80 grams of bread flour. Now, if you have a scale, weigh your ingredients, much more accurate than doing the cup measurements. So, like I said, 2/3 of a cup, 80 grams of bread flour. To that, I'm going to add a 1/2 teaspoon, 1 gram. I'm using SAF red instant yeast. This is yeast that is used by professionals. It gives a really nice bread, good rise. And what I really like about it is that we don't have to proof it. You can just add it right into your dry ingredients. So I'm just going to stir that in and add also a 1/2 teaspoon, 2 grams. I'm using kosher salt here. So stir it. And then just make a little well in the center and add 4 tablespoons, 52 grams of cold filtered water. I like to use filtered water rather than right out of the tap. Filtered water has a better flavor, which therefore will make a better tasting bread. So now what we're going to do is just kind of mix it all together. Use a spoon, a wooden spoon, your fingers, because all we're doing here is just moistening all the flour. That's all. I am going to use my fingers here. Okay, that looks good. I'm going to make sure all the flour is moistened. And then let's take it out of the bowl. Feels good. And then I'm just going to add a little bit of oil. I'm just using a vegetable oil, any flavorless oil, canola, corn. Okay, and then just take your pre-ferment, put it in, and then flip it over. So there's a little oil on top that'll prevent the pre-ferment from drying out. So then just take a little piece of plastic wrap, put that over, and then let this sit at room temperature about an hour, hour and a half. By room temperature, I mean around 75 degrees Fahrenheit, 24 C. So, depending, it could be a little longer, a little shorter. And then after that time, after the hour, hour and a half, just put it into the refrigerator overnight. That's all you got to do. So the second thing we need to do is to soak our seeds. So just in a bowl, I have 3 tablespoons, 30 grams of flax seeds. All of my seeds are raw. Now you could toast your seeds, but I don't bother. I just use raw. And then I'm using 3 tablespoons, 30 grams of sunflower seeds and 4 tablespoons, 30 grams of sesame seeds. And stir that. And then I'm going to add 1/4 cup, which is 60 grams, 60 mils of just, again, cold filtered water. And just stir that. Now the reason we're doing this is we want the seeds to absorb the water overnight. And because if you don't soak your seeds, what's going to happen is once you make your bread, the seeds are going to absorb the moisture in your bread and your bread will stale a lot faster. So that's why we do this. And then just cover it up again. Just leave this at room temperature. You don't have to do anything else. And let that sit overnight. And then when we come back, we will make our bread dough. For our bread dough, if you have a stand mixer, use your dough hook for this. And the first thing you will need is 1 cup plus 4 tablespoons, 285 grams. You want ice cold filtered water. So from the fridge, that's what I find. And by ice cold, I'm talking about around 45 degrees Fahrenheit. which is about 7 degrees Celsius. And the reason we're using such cold water is we're going to knead this dough for quite a while. And kneading really warms up the dough, so that's why you want to start with, cold water. And then we have our pre-ferment. The reason we make a starter pre-ferment is it adds flavor because you're developing this dough overnight. So it's really going to help with the flavor of our bread. So just take your pre-ferment and then we want to cut it into small pieces. I'm just using one of these bench scrapers. You can just use a knife and then just put that in there. And for the rest of our dry ingredients, in a bowl I have 2 1/4 cups, which is 300 grams of bread flour. And to that I'm adding 1/2 cup, 65 grams of, I'm using a whole wheat flour. Now if you wanted to use, have more whole wheat, you could just substitute some of the bread flour for whole wheat to your taste. And then I'm also adding 1/2 cup, 50 grams of rye flour. That adds really nice flavor to our bread. You can use either the light rye or the dark, whatever you like or whatever you can find. And then for a little sweetness, plus to help the yeast can feed on this during our proofing, our fermentation, 2 tablespoons, 30 grams of light brown sugar. Just going to work that in. And then along with, we're adding 1 teaspoon, 2 grams, again, of the SAF red instant yeast. I always like that, don't have to proof it. And then 2 teaspoons, 10 grams of kosher salt. So just mix all that together. Now we're not adding the seeds yet, we'll do that later. We're gonna first mix our dough and build some structure before we add the seeds. So that's good. Let's put this in here. So now what I'm going to do is turn my mixer on first speed, like low speed, for 5 minutes. I do use my timer for this because we just want to get everything moistened and all mixed together. So 5 minutes on first speed. Okay, so that's 5 minutes. Everything's all mixed together. So now what I'm going to do is just increase my mixer speed to second and beat it for about 5 to 7 minutes. So what I'm looking for, the dough is going to clean the bowl. It's going to be smooth, elastic, and a little sticky. I'll show you what it looks like. So 5 to 7 minutes. Okay, so it's been about 5 minutes. It looks good. It's kind of clean. It's cleaning the bowl. It's a little sticky, nice and smooth. But what we're going to do is do a little test. It's called the window test. And because time, or even you look at it, kind of looks done, but we're going to do a window test. So get your hands nice and wet. Take a small piece of dough, and then just gently, we're going to stretch it. And we'll see. See, just move it around. You want to actually kind of be able to see a window, and you don't want your dough breaking apart at this, like ripping. If it's ripping too easily, then it's not kneaded enough. Because it's really hard to kind of, especially if you're new, to just tell by looking at. See, so it's looking pretty good. It's breaking a little, as you can see. So I'm going to beat this maybe about 30 seconds more on second speed, and then we can add our seeds. Okay, so now it's really cleaning the bowl. There was a little stuck to the bottom when we tested it last time. I think it's ready, but we will. Just when you're doing this, just take a bit and then like that. Try not to really stretch your dough too much. So again, just work it around. This is a great test too, because if some people are doing this by hand, you know, time is kind of a hard thing to go by. Yeah, it feels really nice and smooth and elastic. See, that's what we're looking for. Okay, so now we got to add our seeds. And this, as you can see, all the water has been absorbed. So we're just going to dump those all in. And we're going to beat our, or knead, I should say, our dough, you know, somewhere between 5 and 7 minutes on first speed, because, you know, it's going to take a while. That's a lot of seeds for that to be absorbed into our dough, because essentially we have built the strength of our dough and now we're just trying to mix those seeds in. So, you know, check it after about 5 minutes on first speed. Okay, so actually mine took about 7 minutes. You could, if you want to double check, you can do the window test, same thing. So our dough is now ready. Get that off of there. So you want to have a large bowl and put a little bit, again, of flavorless oil in there. And I just take a paper towel. You just want a light coating. Get too carried away. And then take that off. So I'm going to put it in, and then, see, it's a little sticky. You don't want it ridiculously sticky, but a little. And then just take and flip it over so that the top of the dough has a nice light coating of oil. I'm going to take the temperature. I have like an infrared thermometer. You could just use a digital or whatever you have to check. Now I'm about 77, 78 degrees Fahrenheit, which is around, say, 25 C, which is maybe a little warmer than room temperature, but not much. That is why we start with cold, really cold water, because you can see how much our dough from the amount of kneading warmed up. So now just cover it with some plastic wrap, and we're going to let this sit about an hour and a half at room temperature till it's almost doubled in size. Again, if your room temperature is a little colder, it might take a little longer. If you have a really warm kitchen, it might take a little shorter, but around an hour and a half. And then when we come back, we will pre-shape. So our dough has been proofing for 45 minutes, and I forgot to say that at this point, we need to stretch our dough. We do that for 2 reasons. 1 is to equalize the temperature, and 2 is to strengthen the dough. So what you do is just kind of take your hands underneath and just kind of gently pull it out, stretch it, and then just flip it on top of itself. Turn your bowl. Turn your bowl 90 and then stretch. So you want to go all the way around and pull. And then just take the bottom, flip it over like so, like that. Cover it. And then we're going to let it proof for another 45 minutes, and then we will pre-shape our dough. So our dough has been proofing, fermenting for an hour and a half total. So we are ready to divide it and shape, pre-shape. So let's loosen that up. And then you want to flour your surface of your counter very well. And then flip your dough so now the top is on the bottom. And then flour top really well and pat it down. If it's sticking, put a little more flour. You want to get rid of some of those large air bubbles. And then we want to divide our dough in half. The scale is really handy for this. You want about 500 grams per loaf. And cut, don't pull your bread dough, try not to. So either use a knife or if you have one of these bench scrapers. So like I said, about 500 grams. It's light. Let's take a little off of that. Okay. So now, what we want to do is shape each one into a rectangle. I'm just going to eyeball this about 6 inches by 4 inches, so that's 15 by 10, thereabouts. I'm actually not going to use my ruler. So there we go. So what we're going to do is take the shortest end away from us, fold it a third, and kind of like you're folding a letter, and just press down to seal, and then take this and take it and seal it at the end, like so. That's going to create some tension, surface tension on our bread, and then where the seal is, put that on the bottom, and then just rock. Take the palms of your hands and just rock the dough back and forth, and form it into kind of like a little log. Get a little tension there. Okay, so that's what you do. And then just on you can have a baking sheet, or I've just got a wooden board here. Just flour it nicely, and then just put your log like so, and then cover it. And I'm going to do the same thing for the second one. And what we're going to do is let that sit for about a half hour at room temperature. We want the gluten in the flour to kind of relax. And then when we come back, we are going to shape our bread. So we are now ready to form our loaves. So again, flour your surface. Take your rounds, turn them upside down so the top is on the bottom. And then what I like to do is I have a clean linen cloth here. I've floured it, and that's what I'm going. Once I form my loaves, I'm going to put it on there. So flour it nicely because you don't want the bread to stick. And we are going to make what is called batards. And what that is it's kind of a loaf that's thick in the center and then it kind of tapers out. Kind of cool looking. So again, you want to get a little bit of the air bubbles out. Form it again into a rectangle with the short end closest. Move this a little out of the way. So to make a batard, so you have that. What you do is take, fold again, about a third, seal it, and then take these two ends, and we're making like a triangle. So take the two ends and let them meet in the center of the dough, like so, and seal it. And then take this over to the end, like so, and again, we're going to seal that. Kind of cool. Everyone will be impressed when you give them one of these. They'll think you bought it. Okay, so make sure that's nice and sealed. And then you've got the sealed end. Again, put that like that. And then we're going to rock this back and forth. If you've made baguettes, same sort of thing. But what we want to do is kind of make it thick in the center and tapered at the ends. And we wanted about 12 inches, which is about 35 centimeters. This is going to create some tension here. I'm almost there. Yeah, that's about right. So that's what you want. And then take your seam and put it seam side up, and then just make a little wrinkle in the cloth, like so. And then we're going to do the same thing for our second one. Okay, so again, seam side up. Put it like that, and then just cover it with plastic wrap. Now what we're going to do is let this proof for about an hour at room temperature. They will rise a bit, and then when you take your finger, it'll leave a slight indentation. That's when you know it's fully proofed. So what I like to do is to preheat my oven about an hour before. I want to get it nice and hot. If you've ever bought an artesian bread at a bakery, you know they have a wonderful crust. And that is because they bake their bread in a deck oven. Kind of hard to do at home, but we can kind of simulate a deck oven. And so what you want to do for your oven, have your racks in the top and bottom third of your oven. If you have them, I have a pizza stone on both, because that way it's going to get really nice and hot, and that will give you that nice crust. If you only have one, just put it on the bottom. If you have two, that's good. If you don't even have a pizza stone, then put a baking sheet on the bottom there while you're preheating your oven to get nice and hot. I also have a cast iron frying pan on the bottom. I want that in there to get nice and hot, and we are going to put some ice cubes in there when we put our bread in, and that will create a little steam. So that's what you do about an hour, and we want to preheat our oven to 450 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 230 degrees Celsius. So we're ready to bake our bread. So you will need, I'm using a pizza paddle, and what I've done is sprinkled it with fine cornmeal. You could sprinkle it with flour. If you don't have one of these, you could just turn over a baking sheet and then just sprinkle the flour or cornmeal on that. So we need to transfer our bread over. So what I like to do is, that, peel back, and then you could use a spatula if you don't have a wooden board like this, and then just line them up. If you want, you know, if you noticed artesian bread, they kind of have a little flour on top. You just sprinkle a bit. And then we need to score the top of our bread, and we want to do that so that we control the expansion, how it looks, because you will get a bit of a rise or oven spring when we put our bread in the oven. So you could use a sharp knife, or you could use this little tool. It's called a lamb. Really what it is it's got a razor blade and it's like on a stick. So either one, sharp knife or one of these. And then what you want to do is on an angle, just one long cut like that. And that will control how the bread splits in the oven. Now, you need a spatula. I do have some ice cubes. I just put about a cup of ice cubes in there. And we are ready. So I'm going to use this to help me. Okay. And then put your ice cubes in. Going to create some steam, give us a nice crust. So we're going to bake these for 25 to 30 minutes. So they'll turn a beautiful golden brown. And if you turn your loaf over and tap it on the bottom, it will sound hollow. At that point, turn off your oven, open your door, and just let the bread sit in there, turned off oven, for about 5 minutes. So about 25 to 30 minutes of baking time. So our multigrain bread is done. Don't they look gorgeous? Beautiful golden brown. I like where we put a little bit of flour on there. It kind of gives it that artesian look. And then we have a really nice, you can see how we controlled the cut. Nice ear there. That's what they call this kind of ridge. It's a nice ear. So we're going to just put them on a wire rack. We're going to let them cool down and then try some. So our bread has cooled down, so let's cut a slice. So on a cutting board, I'm using a serrated knife. Okay, there we have it. See, nice air bubbles in there. The crust is it's not a real like crisp. It softens as it cools inside. It's really nice and soft. I love that the outside crust is really chewy, little crisp, nice and chewy. It has really good flavor. And then inside, it's soft, it's tender, the seeds. I like those 3 flours. It really adds a depth of flavor to your multi-grain bread. You know, it's good on its own. I love it with, say, some butter and a slice of cheese. You could dip it in oil. Makes really good sandwiches, and you can toast it. So a really good all-purpose type of bread. Try it. And until next time, I'm Stephanie Jaworski of JoyBaking.com.